For people watching right now who have someone in their life that is has a more narcissistic personality and who does struggle with this criticism or any kind of feedback, like what are some strategies you can give for people on how to manage that and their reactions?
Okay. Well, so I'd like to say, usually with friends, if they're like that very much, you kind of distance. So let's think about work and the interpersonal at home. At work, you want to kind of stay out of the way. Don't offer anything personal about yourself. As much as possible, get your job description and anything that you're supposed to do as a memo so that you have it in writing. And also, I would say not really talk to other people at work too much about what this is like to be on the other end of it, because they may be having a strategy that if they get close to the so-called perpetrator, that they will get a raise or they'll get something else. So you be careful of triangles. Go outside to your network of friends and talk to them and ask them about coping strategies. Has anything like that happened in their life? And how did they handle it? Or did they know a friend? And how did that friend handle it? So as much as possible, keeping your head down, do your work, and keep a really good boundary and don't be personal, because that will get used against you. Mm-hmm. So there's a few others, but I mean, that's pretty well the main things. Is really realizing that you could start getting targeted as an incompetent employee when actually you're not. At home, that's tricky, especially when there's children involved. I think that's even worse because, in some ways you start to realize that, wait a minute, this wonderful partner is not so wonderful. And actually, they basically are denying that they swore at you. They're denying that that they pushed you. They're denying that they have a reactive pattern, because all of that would mean that somehow this wonderful person who can do anything and is right all the time is not correct, and they don't have a core identity to support that they can reflect and look at it. Now that's the extreme position, but there's a lot of people out there who are that. So what I tend to say is, first of all, if there's any violence, then you got to protect yourself and figure out how to either to get out or try, depending on the amount of reaction, that you could get some help outside. The person who's narcissist is not likely to want to join you at counseling or therapy because there's nothing wrong with them. It's you. So you have to get support outside. And also there's certain approaches that you can use to help develop more of a center and more of your grounding. We get a chance to just mention a few of those in a minute. But the biggest thing is to realize that you are not in a safe, more balanced back and forth relationship, whether you're married or not married or living with the person. I don't care. And these days we do a lot of things, and they're all what is norm for the society and I think for us. So it's not about categories like that. It's about this behavior that can happen repeatedly, or the person is extremely nice and sort of makes some kinds of amends, but the behavior continues. And typically I've seen that with women who really get uh, chastised and treated poorly and beaten down emotionally, and or actually get pushed or even hit, and then the person is very contrite, and then afterwards everything is smooth, and then the person thinks, oh well, if I only love them enough, or if only I try harder, or maybe I triggered him, right? Well, yeah, maybe he did something that triggered him, but he's got a trigger. Or if it's the woman, she's got a trigger, and that's their work, not your work.
Right.
And so you're starting to take it too personally, and then you start to slide down. So let's talk for a moment, Andy, if this seems right timing,
Yeah.
to talk about what you can do to help resource yourself somatically, because we've been talking more about the analysis and behavioral ideas that you can cope with. But
yes,
actually, you start to lose yourself physically, emotionally, somatically, So one is just, if you're sitting down, putting your feet on the floor, or if you're cross-legged in a chair, that's fine too. But with the feet, just imagining that, frogs can run up walls and all that kind of stuff. So they have suction cups. So I want you to imagine a suction cup in your feet, just to notice that. It might result in a very slight increase in the weight of your feet on the floor. And if in any way this feels uncomfortable, rather than comfortable and slightly better, because we're doing it very quickly, so I'm doing this technique and you can practice it afterwards. Or you can practice it when you feel a little thrown from your grounding, because we're working with grounding. So if in any way you feel a least bit uncomfortable because you're putting more tension into that, or more blood flow into that part of the body, then instead of putting energy in, just think of stretching your feet out, and that will shift your resourcing, because that can happen for some people. And a lot of mind, body, and somatic practitioners do not appreciate that some people can't do yoga because it disturbs the balance for them of the resourcing and not so resourced muscles, and then that affects the psyche. So the same with this. If it doesn't feel too really good or just slightly good, then stretch it out. Okay, now the other way of resourcing and grounding is feeling your weight on the chair and imagining that actually you are that chair is actually creating a resistance, or otherwise you'd fall on the floor. So I like this fantasy of the chair is pushing up against me right now. In a way, I notice subtly that I kind of let myself drop into the chair just a little bit more. That opens up the resourcing of the pelvic floor and the root chakra, for those of you that understand chakras. So, and just imagining you have your feet with the suctions and or the stretching, and the same with this weight on the chair. And if introducing again that more weightedness, blood flow, if you will, more awareness of that part of your body feels in any way uncomfortable, just imagine lifting up from the chair. So each of us have certain muscle groups that, for one reason or other, developmentally or in life or with later traumas, lose some of their resilience, and they're what we call hypo-responsive to touch. In other words, they can't handle much extra energy. So that's why I'm saying if you pay more attention and you're introducing more awareness. In effect, you're making them a little slightly more aware. Sometimes if there's some hypomuscles, it will make you feel uncomfortable, and then we need to do the opposite. The other one is to just slowly rotate on your sit bones on the chair. Just first one way, and then the other. And again, if in any way it's uncomfortable, then you stop doing that and you kind of stretch out that area. Usually I would do this much in an hour, and in workshops sometimes it's even longer than that. So I'm giving you the capsule comment and for you to have an array of resources. Another thing you can do, and I'm almost doing it right now, is placing your hands like that, and then putting some resistance like that into your hands, your shoulders, your back, your lower arms, and your upper arms, and doing a little bit too much. In other words, I call that the athletic movement, and then doing too little, like as if you had your hands apart almost. That's more of that diffuse connection. One's more hyper-responsive, one's more hypo. And then find a zone in the middle. This may be difficult to do at this tempo of instruction, but just see if you can find in the middle something that feels right. And when that happens, you may want to connect to your back. But this can be helpful with containment. And it brings these muscles in as well. So you can feel it in the lateral side of your chest, of your thoracic area. So it's really important when you're with someone who's not treating you well to be able to have enough containment of your own feelings that you first don't spiral down and also react up, because that just feeding the fire. And somewhere between not getting depressed or angry and yelling and trying to defend yourself in an aggressive way is not going to work with these people. Mm-hmm. You have to protect yourself. So what I was giving first is strategies, behavioral strategies, things on the outside, and ideas to think about as categories of possibilities. This is more about resourcing yourself inside. Actually, this is what, if I was doing it with the person who's narcissistic, they would wonder why I'm asking them to do it. Because what do you mean asking you about what happens in my body? I don't understand what you mean. Because that's probably a fairly empty place. Mm. When I'm working with them, I work very, very gently. And I don't get people generally, I've had a few that are really on the spectrum of extreme because they don't want to come to a therapist or coach, or I do see them sometimes, of course, as CEOs of family businesses that I consult to. Mm. And if you get enough business rapport, I can challenge some of what's going on for them. It's more of an art than a strategy. It's a strategy, but you can get fired pretty quick. Mm. Then you're not helpful. Mm-hmm. So, and then if you play down too much, you're self-sacrificing, which is, heading to collapse, instead of your own full core energy supporting you. Mm-hmm. One other one is the opposite of having, too much, too little, and somewhere in the middle. finding somewhere in the middle. But I like working with the polarities because it helps differentiate the different experience, sensation, felt sense in ourselves, in our bodies. I mean, that is ourselves, right? You know. All right. So now some people say, "Oh, I don't like this at all," or "I don't like this," and so I just say, "Don't do the ones you don't like." Because you're kicking off some muscle areas that are not as resourced. This is not a good idea. Don't go there. It's kind of like, don't go there with also living with a narcissist. But I know a lot of women who have stayed because of the children.
Right.
Right. There was just one on the radio driving in this morning, a woman from Afghanistan, and her particular husband was saying to her, you have to obey me, you have to do exactly what I say, and so forth. And if you don't, you're going to be physically. I think there's always with her. I think there was the threat of physical in her feelings, but she didn't say that. But I would wonder that there wouldn't be some of that feeling when that aggression's coming towards you about judgment all the time, about you're not being a good partner, and you have to listen to me and you're wrong, which just leads to a kind of depression